came to take her with back.
Beautiful and they're really the girls and of course take bigger protests. There's pictures of her everywhere.
Memorials went up in the immediate aftermath and vigils have been held. Now, over the next 2.5 weeks, we will say goodbye to the children and their teachers. One heart-wrenching visitation, funeral, and burial after another. These 3 funerals are planned for 11 of the 19 children and teacher Irma Garcia. I'm Ben Thomas.
Hurricane Agatha is the strongest hurricane ever to come ashore in May during the hurricane season in southern Mexico. VAP's Jennifer King. Hurricane Agatha swept ashore on Mexico's southwest coast as a Category 2 near Puerto Angel, about 160 miles south of Oaxaca. It's an area of small fishing towns and laid-back tourist beaches. Residents sought shelter, and the local civil defense agency showed a mud and rock slide blocking a road a few miles inland. Europe is punishing Russia for its war in Ukraine. The European Union agreed to ban the overwhelming majority of Russian oil imports. Few details on this, but Jeff Gladney, a defensive back for the Arizona Cardinals, has died in a car crash in Dallas. He was 25. A fire at a chemical company near downtown Omaha, but no injuries reported. There was thick smoke and some residents had to evacuate. Power high-profile celebrity trial in its final stages.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Hope you had a wonderful holiday. I want to hear your voices today. When I'm looking at the news, I don't think we're asking the right question. Okay. You know, we keep talking about gun laws, and I think that they're important. But what we're not talking about, we're not talking about American violence. And that's I think that's at the heart of this. You can take away the guns. Thank you. You can take away the guns, but you don't take away this propensity for violence. You've not resolved the issue. Pastor Thurston, how are you? Good. Can you bring that down just a bit? Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm really glad we're going to have this discussion today. You know, because they're still asking that question, you know, because America doesn't want to face herself. But we're going to talk about that today. Mm-hmm. So, you know, right up until the last minute, I'm trying to find pertinent information.
All right, we have about 1 minute.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. Thank you. Let's have a great show. God bless us. God help us. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, Monday, May 31st, 2022. I hope you had a blessed Memorial Day weekend. Memorial Day weekend started by newly freed African Americans, everybody. These Union soldiers have been buried in disgrace in the middle of a racetrack. These newly freed African Americans, freed from slavery, dug them up, interred them properly, and had a homegoing service for them that included a parade remembering Memorial Day, started by African Americans just after the Civil War. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and on Facebook on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. That is where I can be reached. And on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. I hope that you will meet me over there as well. Hey, Michael, and let me see, who did I see? Andre, hey, and Linda and Ashley out there in Memphis. George Bush. Please don't get upset with me. Oh, Mark from DC. Paula, how you doing, everybody? We've got our international conference, Rainbow Push, from the 18th through the 22nd of June. I hope that you'll be there. It's free at the South Shore Cultural Center here in Chicago. I think you need to be there. We're going to be talking about not just gun violence, but American violence. If we are standing alone, and I was just reading an article from NBC in which they're decrying the fact that this has been fodder for China and Russia. Well, our civil rights struggles, our struggles against Jim Crow, trying to break the back of apartheid, if you will, in the United States. When that made the cover of the prompt of the newspaper, which was the national newspaper of the USSR, the old Soviet Union, that helped to turn the tide for America, because America was embarrassed that a country that had become, or a set of countries that had become their foe, said, this is America. And on the cover of the Pravda, they had Black children like the Uvalde children, who were being bitten by dogs and beaten back by water cannons. Think about that. So what will that move the needle? I mean, now children and youth are killed more by gun violence in the United States than by cars. But it's a little deeper than that, I think. And so I'm wondering if we're asking the right questions. I think legislation is important, no question about that. But there is a propensity for violence. Attorney Mark Fancher made the point last week. You go to countries where they are leading revolutions, so some people walk around with guns, semi-automatic weapons, machine guns, however they're classified. I'm not into guns, so I don't know as much. But I do know this, they don't kill each other. They don't. What are we doing here? The first time America dropped a bomb on American soil was here. The government did this to the Black people in Tulsa. That's violent. It goes beyond the guns, everybody. Is it the guns? Is it us? We need to talk about that on the Santita Jackson Show today. So let us get with the program today. Let's ask the right questions, and let's just get down to this, because now one of my dear friends pulled her children out of school. She said, I can't go to work and worry about them every day. So homeschooling, she can afford to do it, thank God. What about everybody else? I mean, because guess what? Until everybody's child is safe, no one's child is safe. Until everybody is safe, then you're not safe going to the grocery market. Think about that. Call me at 773-763-9278. Madeline and Shireen and Paula and Mark and Carol out there on the left coast. I want to hear your voices today. I want to hear your thoughts about asking the right questions. Are we asking Janae? Are we asking the right questions? I mean, are we? We're talking about the guns. Is it the guns? Is it us? Is it both? Everybody. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today. And so let's get to some of these headlines so we can get some good news. In Chicago, it's supposed to be between 86 and 89 degrees today. Whew. Oh my gosh, it's going to be cloudy, but it's going to be hot. But in Minneapolis, St. Paul, a little cooler, 69 degrees, good for you, partly cloudy. In the NBA, well, it will be the Celtics versus the Warriors. They triumphed over the Heat this past weekend. The Celtics won over the Heat What a great series. And what a great series the Celtics and Warriors will be starting on Thursday. In the NHL, getting to the Stanley Cup Championships, everybody. The Rangers versus the Hurricanes. The Rangers 6, the Hurricanes 2, everybody. Major League Baseball. The White Sox will be playing the Blue Jays today. Well, the Brewers bested the Cubs 3-1, and the Twins will be playing the Tigers in Detroit. Everybody, the funerals have begun. God bless them. President Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden were in Uvalde, Texas for 4 hours. It was heartbreaking to watch them touch and caress the photographs of the 21 persons who have been killed. Oh boy, 19 of them are children. I think we need to bump up that number, Reverend Thurston, Pastor Thurston, to 22. Mr. Garcia, who died as well. Teacher, Mrs. Garcia's husband, who had a heart attack after placing flowers at her memorial. God bless them. The first funerals are being held this week for the victims of the Uvalde school shooting. Families of the victims have received custom caskets provided at no cost, and 2 funeral homes in Uvalde have vowed to cover all expenses. Meanwhile, questions remain about the response by law enforcement to the shooting. The gunman who killed 19 students and 2 teachers was on the premises for up to an hour. His name is Salvador Ramos. You know, on the Santita Jackson show, I call their names Peyton Gendron in Buffalo. Salvador Ramos. These people, these young people have parents, they have grandparents, they have families, they come from communities, they have histories. And I think we need to know what these histories are. That's part of the problem. If you don't know what the histories are, if we don't know who they are, then we don't know where they've been, and we don't know where they're going. As Russia remains defiant in the face of sanctions from the West, the European Union has dealt another blow to the Kremlin by partially banning Russian oil imports to the EU, according to CNN. There have been 257 confirmed monkeypox cases and about 120 suspected cases in 23 nations, including the United States, according to the World Health Organization. But I have to find out from Dr. Nathan just how serious this is, because we're hearing that it is not like a killer. We hope that that is not the case. Oh, Pastor Stephen Thurston, I'm so glad that you're going to be joining us today as we talk about what's really going on here. I don't think we're asking the real questions. But in the meantime, we need to get some good news from you. How you doing today? Hope you had a wonderful weekend, you and your family. We're going to have congressional candidate Jonathan Jackson on. I've reached out to other campaigns. I guess everybody's very, very busy. But I want to be fair. And he's going to be talking about that. And interestingly enough, the day of the shooting, he had just released a position paper on gun violence, interestingly enough. But Pastor Stephen Thurston, wonderful hearing your voice. Give us some good news.
Yes, ma'am. Well, are you aware that we all make unconscious vows early on in life, and they become our internal blueprint for life? These vows dictate who we can be and are often deeply ingrained. Our vows are attached to a deeper need that all of us are trying to meet. The need for love, acceptance, safety, connection, and security. Now, they're not bad or wrong, and neither are we for having them. They come from a smart part of us that's trying to help us to feel safe. So someone may be asking, well, Stephen, what is a vow? Great question. Glad you asked. Vows are more than a belief. Vows are a never again thing, or this is the only way to be because my survival is at stake thing. When we experience trauma in our formative years, it's not what happens to us that stays with us. It's the vows we made and what we concluded it meant about ourselves, others, and life in general that stays with us. We concluded who we needed to be in order to be loved and accepted, and that became our unconscious blueprint that started dictating our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. It's like we're living in a trance with automatic conditioned responses, and breaking the pattern is hard because we're forced to let go of our survival mechanisms without healing the inner affliction. It feels like jumping out of an airplane with no parachute. It's scary and overwhelming. And so we find eating disorders and addictions and depression, anxiety, pain, or illness often as the resulting symptoms, showing us where our energy has become frozen in time, where we're carrying deep wounds and holding on to vows we made from traumatic or painful experiences. So many of us use food and drugs, smoking or drinking as a way to find ease with what we're feeling and experiencing. We're essentially trying to numb the pain stemming from traumatic experiences or from the idea of not being perfect or not feeling as if we're good enough. The best approach is to understand why these impulses exist in the first place and help that part of ourselves to feel loved and to feel safe. Now, I want us to note now that no matter how many affirmations we say or how much mindset work we do, our survival mechanisms and vows are more powerful. So part of us will resist change even if it's healthy. When trauma gets stored in our bodies, we move to the place where we feel unsafe, and until we resolve it and reconnect with the feeling of safety in the area where we're traumatized, we'll remain in a constant state of fight, flight, or freeze. Be hypersensitive and overreactive, take everything personally, and seek potential threats, which make it difficult to move on from the initial occurrence that happened in those formative years. So the question is, how do we see what vows are dictating our life's journey? Well, here's what we can do. We can notice our unconscious vows by being with the parts of ourselves that are afraid. When we sit with this part of ourselves with unconditional love and acceptance and a desire to understand where the vow originated, instead of using excuses to run away, it will communicate to us why we're afraid. Healing is about releasing that pent-up energy that's stored in the body and making peace with ourselves and our traumas. Healing is about reminding our bodies that the painful of the traumatic events are no longer happening in our lives. It's learning how to comfort ourselves when we're afraid and learning emotional regulation. Healing is about getting clear about where the hurt is coming from. Otherwise, we'll spend our time going over the details and continuously find ourselves triggered because we never get to the real source. Healing is not about forcing. It's about accepting what's happening. It's a kind, gentle, and loving approach. Now remember, we're working with tender parts that have been traumatized and hurt. These parts don't need to be pushed or told how to be. They need compassion. They need to be seen, heard, loved, and accepted. They need our loving attention so they can feel safe and at ease. They've been hiding, in a sense. They've been disconnected. When we acknowledge them and bring them into our hearts, we experience a loving integration. When we experience a loving integration, we experience a true homecoming. And in that experience, a sense of inner peace. Then we more naturally start taking loving care of ourselves and making healthy choices. We've got to be clear about the vows that we've made, Santita, that's driving the daily decisions of our lives.
I guess love is the answer. It always is. Love is the answer. Pastor Stephen Thurston, everyone, you can go to his website. That's Stephen J. Thurston with a PH, right? .com and get the book. Come on now, you know I got it now. Stephen J. Thurston. That's Stephen with a PH, everybody. Mirror Moments. Go on and get that. You all have been supporting the book. Please continue to do that. He's going to be rejoining us at the bottom of the hour as we dig deep, Pastor Thurston, on what is happening in America. The mass shootings continued over the weekend in the United States. And we're still not calling the names of the gunmen, if you will. I think that's a mistake. I tell you, remember, Peyton Gendron. He's the young man who apparently walked into the parking lot and the top store in Buffalo and killed 10 people. Salvador Ramos killed 21 people. Then the police killed him, we've been told. You've got Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris in Columbine. And let's just keep on going. We need to know who their parents are. because they were developed. They developed as murderous people while in their parents' care or somebody's care. So we're going to be talking about that. But we've got Dr. Shanina Knighton with us today, infection preventionist, mom, wife. Oh my goodness. She is teaching and she is a research scholar at Case Western Reserve University. She's a registered nurse. We've got so many questions for you, Hope. But first, we hope that you had a wonderful, wonderful holiday, Dr. Knighton.
I did. How was yours?
Oh, it was great. It was great. It was great. I have a few questions for you. Well, let's get to them as quickly as we can. Monkeypox. What is that? And they say there are about 257 cases here. And is it lethal? What is it?
Are you saying smallpox or monkeypox?
Monkeypox.
Okay. So, I'm trying to figure out how to do all of this. So, it's a virus that typically starts in animals. I was like to say, or like when we're talking about transmission, people typically get it from infected rodents. It's like, let's say somebody is bitten by, like, let's say a rat, a mouse, a squirrel, and let's say blood or any type of bodily fluids, blisters, scabs, somebody coming in contact with that type of fluid. And then, long story short, it being transmitted. It's not such as a respiratory infectious disease. It's not airborne. So there's a lot of different things about it when we think about it from coronavirus. Okay, so still not the same exact thing. For this, it's interesting because when someone gets it, I don't know if anyone has seen smallpox, but what's so concerning to me is there's zero cases of smallpox in the 21st century because vaccines did exist, but it was so contagious to the point where the contact was real. And this is where I tell people, too, about cleaning surfaces, right? Because if somebody's fluid is on the surface and they have smallpox, you come in contact with that fluid and it touches a vulnerable part of your body, then you're at risk for it. But it's these ugly bumps is the best way to describe it. They typically last like about 2 to 4 weeks till someone gets it. Severe cases, someone would die, but that death rate is still much lower than COVID at about 3 to 6%. But just as I mentioned, it's really material contaminated with the virus or a person that's contaminated with the virus. That would be of concern. And it's really like the lesions, the bodily fluid, contaminated materials, like let's say you're sharing bedding with somebody and typically like there might be body fluid, then that could be a way. It's not to say that it's not a concern, because the thing is, it's like I continue to bring up, people are not fully aware of the prevention practices, that they don't understand how important surface cleaning is. They don't understand how someone, let's say, wiping one of these pumps or scratching it and not knowing what it is, then comes in contact with airport, screen, right? An airport screen. And then the next thing you know, you potentially transfer something to yourself. So this is more so, it's not to say that it can't be transmitted respiratory-wise, but the majority of it is really coming in close contact with someone, almost similar to a chicken pox or smallpox. And I'm telling you, I encourage people to look at it because the bumps are ugly, or the pustules is what we'll call it, because they're fluid filled. And what happens is if they're fluid filled, then if they're getting old over those 2 to 4 weeks, they then start to dry out. But during that whole process, when they're beefy and filled with fluid, when they're leaking, that is when they're most, someone is most at risk for being able to transmit it to others.
So I guess bottom line is this something that we should be worried about? I'm not saying that we should dismiss it, but it's being mentioned in the same breath as COVID-19, get your vaccines, on and on and on and on and on. This is just a whole lot to take in. I have a couple minutes.
It is a lot to take in. I was going to say one of the populations for me that I'm most concerned about, I would say, is going to be our homeless population. Because if we're talking about rats, mice, possibly squirrels, being that risk factor per se, you think about people that may have access to nature in that regard, to be subjected to being bit by something like that may be contaminated. Now, how the rodents got it and why it's here and how it transmitted, that's a whole different situation. For it would take somebody to lock it down, like why it's here. But I think the biggest thing to understand is that it is a part of the same family of smallpox. Smallpox had a vaccine that was used to treat it back when it was a problem. And long story short, they may be able to eradicate it using that same formula. But I just want to bring up that it's less contagious than smallpox and it causes less severe illness.
Okay.
But if you get a fever, rash, if your throat, when I say throat, meaning like you touch it and your lymph nodes start to be a little bit swollen, then that may be when you want to go get checked out just to make sure it's not, something like that. It could be stress or it could be something more simpler. But it's worthwhile going to get checked out to be safer than sorry. But I keep telling you, hand hygiene works. You want to make sure you're not transmitting something like that to yourself.
I just found out, and I want to thank you for this, Paula, that my colleague, Joni Esposito, has COVID, sending her much love and healing light. And you said, Paula, like me, she worked very hard to avoid it. I guess this is it. My doctor said to me, you're going to get it. She said this back in 2019, at the end of 2019, as it was approaching our shores. She said, but you want to be strong enough to survive it. Oh, that's always been my point. But I told one of my close friends that I was just getting through COVID. He said, but you're like the queen of no COVID. I said, no. I said, I'm the queen of trying to be strong so that COVID or anything that comes my way, I can be strong enough to survive it. And one of the persons who helped me to do that, Dr. Santita, just not a physician, but a research scholar, a registered nurse who said, look, get your immune system together and this is how you can do it. And I promise you, she's a gift. Everybody, let's talk about the real questions that we need to be asking about Uvalde, Texas, and Buffalo, and Columbine, and Sandy Hook, and on and on and on and on. Is it the guns, or is it us, or is it both? Back in just a minute. Thank you, Jean. Dr. Knighton, how are you? Good morning. How are you? Oh, girl, I am doing well. I cannot complain. I cannot complain. Just trying to get the last of these papers together, right? So.
Yeah, my yard work done.
Oh, I got a chunk of my clothes put away. I'm gonna do some more of that today. And I'll do some more of that today. And that is, hold on. Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm trying to pull this down.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Do you want to stay with us? We're talking about what's. I think that we need to ask the real questions. I think what's being missed here, because these mass shootings continue, and we've gone from Buffalo to Uvalde. We need to be in both places because that has not been resolved yet. Buffalo, they're still burying people. They just started burying people from the Buffalo massacre, too. Please do not forget that.
That's the problem, though. It's like you got this place where it's become numb, and I think that's the concern. Is that people are becoming numb to it, and it's sad. Like it really is. And then even like in the state of Ohio, from July 1, then they actually start to open carry laws. And that's concerning to me because Cleveland being the largest foreign city in America, which actually is one of the most violent cities when it comes to gun violence. So it's concerning, like it really is. Sometimes I feel like the campus being done on purpose because they just want everybody to kill each other.
It's because let me tell you what, if they decided one great getting up morning to stop this, we could. But there's some of this the violence is baked in the cake here, and there's just a lot that we saw that was just not right. You have these children calling 911. Oh my gosh, from inside of the school, and the police are not responding. I'm like, how does that work?
I know, and it's crazy, Santita, because even here, it was heart-wrenching yesterday because one of the churches on a major street where a lot of people have to pass through, their church corner sits at a diagonal right there. So there's 21 wheelchairs placed there. And so it's very powerful. They got 21 empty seats placed there. And I just thought that was such a powerful display to actually show people like where we are.
Absolutely. And we need to do more of that. But that's why the lynching museum, please, I think that needs to be a traveling exhibit also. Because we need to talk about what we have done. Yes, dear.
I can't get a hold of Reverend Wilson or the other guests. I know for, I believe, the first guest,
Jennifer Bishop?
Janet Wilson. I think it's just going straight to voicemail on for Reverend Wilson.
I'll send you.
Reverend Wilson.
Okay. Let me send you another number. Let me send you another number for her. Okay.
Okay. I have the Reverend up again.
And you have Jennifer Bishop? You have Jennifer Bishop on?
I don't have either.
Okay. Well, just keep. No worries. Just keep trying. Okay. Thank you, dear.
Okay.
Do you want to stay with us?
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Breathing for all of the people. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio. The voice of progressive Minnesota, sending love to everyone in Chicago, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and all around the country and all around the world who are joining us on my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, and the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. Call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. Want to hear your voices today. We're talking about Uvalde. We pivoted from the massacre in Buffalo, in which Peyton Gendron, an 18-year-old gunman, walked into the parking lot of the Tops supermarket, a supermarket that held so much promise for the Black community in Buffalo. because it was a food desert. There was no major chain. There was no place for them to go to get food. Well, Tops opened there, and it's a source of pride, a gathering spot for black people who live in Buffalo, whatever their income. And he just opened fire, killed 10 people, killed the security guard inside, former police officer. Yeah, he did that. Peyton Gendron. Salvador Ramos shot his grandmother in the face and then drove his car into a ditch and then uh, walked into the school. We can't quite get the story right, but we do know that he killed 19 children and 2 teachers. And then Mrs. Garcia, a teacher, she her husband went to drop off flowers and died when he got home. So put him as 22 people, okay? Because he got shot too. The bullet that went through his wife went into his heart. Think about that. What is going on? Because everyone is saying, okay, the Senate is going out. They still haven't uh, enacted any gun laws. Now, mind you, the ban on assault weapons was allowed to expire. How did that happen? But is it the guns or is it us? Because it seems to me that whether we have guns or not, we have a propensity for violence in the United States. Indeed, the French called us out. They said, you're exceptional, all right. You're exceptional at mass shootings. And America, they chided us from the biggest newspaper in France, Le Monde. You're killing yourself. America is killing itself. That is what they said in their editorial last week. And they have been giving poignant coverage of this tragedy. Like, how can you do this? How can you chide people all around the world, and yet you are doing this? And yes, the Chinese and the Russians, they are saying the same thing. Now, mind you, during the 60s, there was a picture of black children who were protesting, led by Reverend James Bevel and his then wife, Diane Nash Bevel. They really started the Selma campaign by having children in Alabama leave school. They said, okay, and protest, meet at the church and really mount their own protest. That having been said, these children were hosed with water cannons. When you open up a fire hydrant, the power is unbelievable. Unbelievable. And they were being bitten by dogs, sicked on them by the police. When that picture was on the cover of Pravda, which was then the official paper of the USSR, the United Soviet Socialist Republic, Russia and its states, attached states, well, guess what? It was embarrassing to the United States. And now we have the same issue. But instead of looking outward, I think we need to look inward. And I think we need to look at why the number one killer of our youth and children, guns. What is going on here? Let's talk about this. 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. And please do not tell me that it's mental illness. Now, mind you, we need to take greater care of those who are mentally ill, but we should also not mischaracterize them. Mentally ill people hurt themselves. They don't hurt other people. Sane, sober, mean-spirited people hurt other people. Hurt people hurt people. They kill other people. That's what's happening here. Salvador Ramos is not mentally ill. I tell you what will make you mentally ill: being mean, being cruel, having values that are absolutely ungodly. Peyton Gendron is not mentally ill. He is cruel. He believes that someone's life is less valuable than his. If you're going to be man enough to go kill people, then why do you need to wear a Kevlar vest so no one can kill you? Are you serious? Yeah, I put it out there. So I want to hear from you. 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. I reached out to Reverend Stephen Thurston, the teaching pastor of the largest black church in the state of Illinois, the Salem Baptist Church, which is also known as the House of Hope. And of course, he's from a great preaching tradition. His grandfather, father, and they come from New Covenant, one of our great churches. This is something that has been concerning to you because you are also You're a sociologist. Help me to understand. Do you think we're asking the right questions, Pastor Thurston?
Santita, the book of Matthew, Matthew 22, it records the story, the narrative of Jesus being in engagement and conversation with an attorney. And he said to Jesus, "Teacher, which is the most important commandment in the law of Moses?" And Jesus' reply was this: "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and all the commands of the prophets are based on these two commandments." And whether or not you ascribe to the Christian faith or some other faith, I think what Jesus states here applies to all of us. And it's critical to the conversation that we're having. We don't love God. And from there, we don't love ourselves. And we also don't love our neighbors. And we have a very narrow definition of who our neighbor is. We don't see everybody as our neighbor. And because we function in that regard, because we don't love God, because we don't love self, and therefore we don't love neighbor, we find ourselves in the position that we're in with our national problems not being first and foremost political, social, or economic, but rather spiritual matters. And so, yes, what you raise is critical, that the focus, the lens must be shifted towards introspection. Because an individual, entity, organization can't consistently behave in a way that's inconsistent with who and what they really are. America has continued for years, centuries, to present this pretentious presentation that is not consistent with our actual behaviors and who we are at our core. Our moral fiber, our spiritual fabric, it's decayed and declined over the years. And now we're left with facing who and what we really are. We have a culture of violence, of murder, of destruction, and it's oozing from the pores of humanity. And we are refusing to get to the root. And we continue to look at the symptoms. And you can never be healed. I believe Dr. Knight would speak to this. You can never be healed if you just focus on symptoms and you never dig into the source.
Everybody, you call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. I mean, are we really digging down at the core of what is bedeviling us? I want to hear your thoughts, everybody. I've got joining us Reverend Jeanette Wilson from Rainbow Push. She's a lawyer and a pastor. But we also have Jennifer Bishop. I want to toss this to you, Jennifer. I met you working with the Brady campaign years ago. And of course, she is a gun victim family survivor. She lost her family, 3 precious members of her family, to gun violence. And she's the former national program director for victims and survivors at the Brady campaign. I was struck by something you told me last week, Jennifer. You said, I asked Reverend Jackson, who you've been working with for a couple of decades now, why do you take gun violence so seriously? He said, because it's personal to me. But he was talking to Dr. King when he was killed. And he was killed by, a very powerful rifle. And everyone who was at the Lorraine Motel at that moment says it sounded like a missile. And when you saw Dr. King, it had the effect of a missile. That's why I'm hoping that at least one of these parents will have an open casket so you can see the damage. Because even when you see pictures of Dr. King in the casket, that's clay. It's clay. It's very damaging. Jennifer Bishop, where are we and what is the problem? Just talk to me. Your thoughts.
Oh, Santita, this is such an aspirational discussion, and I commend you for having it. And it is so hard. Obviously, our human society and our human world, is complex. There are many, many things going on. But if you look over time of all of human history, the whole reason why people began to form laws as they would live in groups with each other. This is, I'm a retired history teacher. This goes back since the earliest human civilization, people began to form laws saying to each other, this is right behavior and this is wrong behavior, because obviously they were struggling with it back then the way we do today. Most people behave well. Most people are caring and polite, and they wouldn't hurt another person, deliberately at all, ever. Most people would do that voluntarily anyway. Whether we made murder illegal or not, most people would never murder. But there have always been these fringe behaviors from people that are alienated, and I don't know if you want to say mentally ill or if they're just dysfunctional or, weren't loved well when they were young babies or what. But there's always been, the need for us to stand up and say to each other, these are our principles of right and wrong, and that's why we have laws, and that's why we have, always tried to have with each other a conversation about mutually shared values of how we should behave with each other to try to guide us and teach us. But you're right. I mean, there is a crisis of, disconnection with each other's humanity that is clearly getting worse as our population grows larger on the planet, as our willingness to be destructive of very life that sustains us on this planet. The fact that we continue, I can't believe that we continue as a society collectively to use fossil fuels when we know we're killing the very planet on which we live. What is wrong with us? Why is it that we are looking at the climate change data and saying, this has to stop immediately because the projected data is very clear on what it's going to do to the planet. And yet people seem to be, there is something very worrisome about our both collective and sometimes, often in this case, obviously very individual horror that most people can't even imagine when you think about it. But there does seem to be a sickness at the core of all this in terms of our own understanding. It's hard. It is hard. But I do believe that laws are helpful, can be helpful as a way to at least take away from availability to quick reaction people massive numbers of people.
Everybody, I want to hear from you. I want to hear your thoughts. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Brian and Jim, call us back. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to get some feedback from you because this conversation really is about you. Reverend Jeanette Wilson, you are a lawyer, you are a pastor. Talk to me. Well, I don't know where the phone is ringing, but or why, but here we go. Talk to me. What do you make of all of this? Are we asking the right questions, Reverend Wilson? Is Reverend Wilson there? Okay. Reverend Wilson, are you there? Well, yes, are we asking the right questions? Okay, let's put her on hold. But let me go back to you. Reverend Thurston, as you're looking at this wall-to-wall coverage on the news, are we asking the right questions? I mean, we're talking about the gun laws, and I just feel like we've been here before. Sandy Hook, Columbine, pro-Mississippi, Paducah, Kentucky, just keep on going. When we were in Tulsa, was it last year? Yeah, it was last year. What was so painful was, all of the things that we're finding out about Tulsa. Even today, as we dig up the mass graves of the blacks who were just killed and dumped, as we find out that the first time a bomb was dropped on American soil, we did it to black citizens, Stephen Thurston. You go to the lynching museum in Alabama, They started with 5,000 markers of lynchings that they found in a more than 100-year span. They didn't go back to 1619. If they went back to 1619, all of those markers would have averaged out to about a lynching a month for every month that we have been here since 1619. It was just over 100 years. Are we asking the right questions, Pastor?
We all recognize that there's something wrong with the world and with mankind. I mean, you say it every day. You start to show up with the headline news, and those of us who watch news and read news, we're constantly updated on all that's destructive, all that's harmful, all that's corrupt in our society. And we have this constant internalization of this negative news, albeit accurate, but without some defined solution. It only serves to create psychological and emotional disequilibrium, which, if left unmanaged, can cause lasting damage to self and others. There has to be policy. There has to be legislation that works. But at the core, there has to be some moral adjustment in our country, as the other guest alluded to. And so we have to, again, ask the right questions to get to the right solutions, so that we stop talking in circles and get to the core of what humanity needs to address within self, to then regulate self, so that certain laws won't even have to be in place, because self is being regulated to love, to care for, to show compassion and concern one towards the other. If we love each other as human beings and love each other as we love ourselves, we would not find ourselves in such a deprived society.
Deprived and depraved. I mean, because Jennifer Bishop, you and I have gone back and forth with this down through the years. I mean, I'm all for the laws. I think it's important to have laws, because they say we're a nation of laws and not of men. Okay, and that's important. We have laws that, even if we don't agree on religion and politics, there are certain things that you can and cannot do, should and should not do. Well, no, that you can and cannot do without penalty. Let me be very specific with that. Because I think that our customs, our folkways, our moral ways, our culture is way off, Jennifer. It's way off, because even with laws in place, there's some impulses. I mean, Peyton Gendron did reconnaissance at the Tops Mall in March, at the Tops store. I mean, he intended to kill people. He intended, with his Kevlar outfit on, he intended to walk out of that store having killed as many people as he could alive. And he was going to walk through the black community of Buffalo and kill everybody he saw. That's not a law. That's not a legal problem. That's a moral problem. Salvador Ramos, oh, you're angry, you've been bullied. I'm so sorry about that. I think that's a horrible thing. So, you know what? We need to find out who bullied you and ask why. And deal with the fact that these children don't treat each other nicely. That's a problem. It is a problem. But you don't need to shoot your grandmama in the face.
Responding to truly programmed misinformation about, the Buffalo shooting. That shooter was absolutely told by lying. I can't even imagine what the agenda would be from right-wing hate mongers who want people to believe and react strongly to an imagined threat of, the takeover, the replacement theory, and so he goes out and responds that way. But one of the things I sort of look at the larger evolution of all species, Mother Nature, if you will, just life on the earth. There's a diversity of things in life in all species, that some work and some don't, and nature tries them and casts aside the things that don't work and tries to, move forward in survival, the things that do work. And, human beings are very intelligent and diverse, and we have created, as we live together, rules to try to set up a guidance that the vast majority of us follow. The vast majority of us live in moral and kind ways, and get along well and are productive and the vast majority of us get it, but we have fringe members of our society who are not well integrated into the values and the positive things that people can be to each other, and they listen to poison. And I truly do think that you've got a huge, overwhelmingly based on falsehood of extreme right-wing news that comes out with just ridiculous theories that make people angry and hostile to each other and fearful and suspicious of each other. So, it would be a great place to start, in addition to taking massively destructive weapons out of their hands, to also stop the lying that is going on in massive forms of media, so that it doesn't encourage people to misbehave as well.
All this lying, the propagandizing, that's really what it is, to move people in a particular direction. I want to hear your thoughts, everybody. I really, really do. Max Myrick from Washington says it's the same level of narcissism that made it possible for colonialism and enslavement. And they don't seem to have any sense of shame or care about anything but themselves. This hatred is a zealous, cult-like mindset. I want to know what your thoughts are, everybody. I want to know what your thoughts are. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. What percentage of the population by race and socioeconomic class is affected most by gun violence? Very quickly, do you know that information? I don't have that. Jennifer, do you know?
What percentage of by race is affected as victims of gun violence?
And socioeconomic class.
I don't know that. It'd be interesting to know if there's anybody that studied it, but I will tell you that it is unique to America, and it's not just because we have bad gun laws, which right now, ever since the 1970s, the gun industry was taken over. The gun industry manufacturers took over the National Rifle Association, which used to be a sportsman's organization and a hobbyist and people who were into hunting. And now it was taken over by people who deliberately focused the efforts of the gun lobby towards profit making.
Sure.
And so that is one huge problem. But remember, we live in a country, unlike in Europe and unlike in some of the older societies where there is less crime, there's better laws, there's a better sense of collective living together. You go to a country like, I just returned from a trip to Iceland. They don't even have to have a military there. These people are living in peace and harmony with each other. They have good laws, and they have also a very healthy society.
Sure.
There are places on earth, and America was founded on slavery, genocide of the indigenous population. We are uniquely problematic here in the United States.
Well, just hold that thought. Hold that thought, because I think that all of that's, you're right. I think that's all of that's part of it. And Iceland, they're not trying to get into NATO. Some of these people are saying, the militarism, we just don't really want to do that. Got to think about that, everybody. Call me 773-763-9278. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Are we asking the right questions about all of this violence, everybody? Back in just a minute. Oh, thank you. Stay right there, you all. Oh, boy. Oh. Yes.
I just wanted to I don't know if the gentleman told you that I will have to leave for work after about 7:30.
Oh, okay. No worries. Thank you for letting me know that. I put a lot on Postmate's plate. Bless his heart. I put a lot on his.
I want to meet that amazing pastor you had speaking.
Oh, Reverend Thurston is right here.
Reverend Thurston, I was moved by your words. Thank you for them.
Yes, ma'am. Appreciate you.
Well, you know what? If you don't mind, I'd like to connect the two of you by text today.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Jay, I can tell you, you should know Jennifer, Pastor Thurston, because she is one of the leading advocates in the country for peace and for gun control, ending gun violence. And she speaks from a place of experience, sadly, because she lost 3 of her family members to gun violence, to murder.
Yeah, a 16-year-old up here in Winnetka just wanted to see what it would feel like to shoot somebody, picked them at random because their home was across from the police station, and killed my beautiful 25-year-old pregnant sister and her husband. And they were such wonderful people, and he just did it for the heck of it, just because he wanted to see what it would feel like. He'd been ideating about Hitler and Manson, and he thought that they were just, that evil was brilliant and that good people are stupid sheep, and it's sad. He's doing life in prison now, but he's still trying to get out.
Wow. Santita, I sent you a video on Instagram of a little boy who's been interviewed on the playground, had to be about 6 or 7, and spoke about his desire to become a murderer. I don't know if you had a chance to see it yet.
No, I haven't. His desire to what?
To become a murderer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Hey, Ms. Jackson, I have on Jonathan Jackson and Dwight McKee.
Fantastic. Jonathan Jackson, hey, sweetie, you're joining Jennifer Bishop and Reverend Stephen Thurston. Dwight McKee. Hey, Jonathan.
How you doing?
Hey, Dwight.
Hello, Jennifer. Hello, Reverend Thurston.
Hey, how are you?
Jonathan, I'm your biggest fan. I'm so glad that you're on.
I'm your fan. I admire your strength.
Well, I'm so glad that you all are here.
You're doing great work, my friend. Can't wait till you're in Congress.
Very kind of you.
Can't wait. I'm
Yeah.
going to come down and walk door to door for you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Would be a blast.
And that was the first thing she said to me last week. We got to get your brother in Congress.
We need you.
We got an event coming up at New Covenant Church.
Yes, sir.
We support it. So I look forward to that. We're going to have a town hall.
Well, it'll be wonderful. I'm really glad that you all are here. And let's just have this conversation. It's a very important one. It's and a lot of people have a lot of thoughts. People are jumping in on the chat line here, but I want to hear your voices. I want you to call 773-763-9278. I want to hear your voices. Are we asking the right questions about all of this violence? You do know the mass shootings continued over the weekend. 13 people in Philadelphia. Wow. 13 people were shot in Philly. More than 30 people were killed over the weekend. There were 8 mass shootings. 8. So they didn't stop. All of the discussions that we're having did not stop all of this killing and all of this shooting. We got to talk about this. That's why we're here today. And we're so glad, Jonathan Jackson, that you've been able to join us, Dwight McKee, and Reverend Stephen Thurston, and of course, Jennifer Bishop, formerly of the Brady campaign. But I don't think once you're in the Brady campaign, you can never leave it. But she was their national director for victims and survivors. And I thank God for you and your husband and the work that you all have been doing, and pray for you and your health and strength every day. Because I know I can only imagine, that every time you see one of these events, it's a dagger in the heart. It's.
Our very dear friend Sandy and Lonnie Phillips, whose daughter was killed in Aurora, Colorado. They have made this their life's work now. They just sold their home. They bought a motorhome and they just go from place to place and help victims. That's all they do. It's just amazing that we need this so much. We have so many people that are willing to just lash out in anger against other people randomly, and so much suffering created because of it. It's awful.
It's horrible. Thank you, Paula.
30 seconds.
Okay, stand by, everybody. And Bob from Indiana. All right.
15.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Last day of May, Monday, May 31st, 2022. On the heels of the Memorial Day weekend, hope you had a safe and wonderful weekend. It's been a weekend of reflection for so many of us as we've looked at the massacres in Uvalde, Texas, and Buffalo, New York. And we had more mass shootings over the weekend. At least 30 victims at least. What is going on in America? I think we need to ask that question as we talk about enacting new laws and on and on and on. I want to know, is it the guns? Is it us? Do we need new laws? Do we need a change in culture? Do we need a change of mind? Talk to me. 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. We've got congressional candidate Jonathan Jackson with us, Dwight McKee, Dr. D, and Reverend Stephen Thurston, teaching pastor at the Salem Baptist Church, and Jennifer Bishop, the former National Program Director for Victims and Survivors at the Brady Campaign. Indeed, she is a family survivor of gun violence, having lost her brother-in-law, her sister, her pregnant sister, 3 people in one fell swoop, because this young man just wanted to see what it was like to kill somebody. Sounds very Leopold Loeb. It doesn't. This is not you, and it's got to stop. As the French have said on the cover of Le Monde, America is killing itself. Let's talk about it, everybody. Call me at 773-763-9278 as I come to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. That's my official page, and the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody, please get on over there. In Chicago, we're going to have a high between 86 and 89 degrees, cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 69 degrees, partly cloudy. Okay, it's going to be the Celtics versus the Warriors on Thursday. The Celtics beat out the Heat this past weekend. It's going to be a great series. In the NHL, the Rangers 6th, the Hurricanes 2. In Major League Baseball, well, the Cubs fell to the Brewers 3-1 yesterday. And today, the White Sox will be facing off against the Blue Jays, and the Twins will be playing the Tigers in Detroit. The first funerals are being held this week for the victims of the Uvalde school shooting. Families of the victims have received custom caskets at no cost, and 2 funeral homes in Uvalde have vowed to cover all expenses. Of course, President Joe Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden were in Uvalde yesterday for 4 hours. Heartbreakingly, they touched the photos of the 21 persons who were shot at the Robb Elementary School last Tuesday, a week ago today. People in the crowd were urging him to take action. They were shouting, please do something. And then, of course, Governor Abbott was there, and Governor Abbott was booed. It turns out that while he did not speak at the NRA convention, he did send a video of a speech to the NRA convention. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Let's talk about this today. Are we asking the right questions? Are we asking the right questions? As we get into today's show, for those of us who really, really want a piece of this American dream, it seems increasingly out of reach. But Team Hochberg says that is not true. If you do not have credit, if you want to build your credit, if you want to rebuild your credit, if you have credit card debt, if you want to purchase a new home, that's not beyond your reach. If you want to refinance your existing home, it's not beyond your reach. If you want to secure a VA loan or really want to study reverse mortgages, call Team Hoffberg at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit 56david.com, 56david.com. If you go to Google, you will see hundreds of reviews, positive reviews, of the work that they've been able to do, everybody. On January 1st of this year, the 30-year fixed interest rate was in the low threes, and now it's in the high fives and climbing. It now costs over $360 more a month to finance a $200,000 home, over $540 more a month to finance a $300,000 mortgage than it did on January 1st. The rates are climbing, and unfortunately, there is no interest relief in sight. That's why you need to work with a lender who understands the market and will look out for your best financial interest, everybody. That's why you need Team Hochberg, everybody. 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. Visit 56david.com, 56david.com. Visit them, everybody. Because if you tell them just the consultation, the first consultation is free. Tell them what your financial situation is. Don't be embarrassed. Everybody's been there or headed there something. Tell them what your situation is, and they will construct a program to help you. I promise you. Call into the Santita Jackson Show and let us know how it's going. Everybody, let's talk about Uvalde, Buffalo, the lynching museum, the violence in America. I think the problem is a little bit deeper. So starting with you, Jonathan Jackson, I know you're campaigning today, but you had released a position paper, a white paper, if you will, on gun violence. Ironically, a week ago today, and we didn't even know this was going to happen, but this has become routine. Are we having the right discussion? Are we asking the right questions? We're talking about gun laws and what we need to do, but is this a cultural problem, a spiritual problem? Does it go beyond laws? Is it inclusive of laws? Is it the guns? Is it us? I've given you a whole lot, but I know you can handle it. Jonathan Jackson?
I would say that it's cultural, it's spiritual, and it is political. When you think of the commonality of all of these shootings that we just talked about, go back to the Tree of Life Synagogue, Sutherland Springs, Powwow Synagogue, Midland, Odessa, San Bernardino, Waffle House, Sandy Hook, Aurora, Las Vegas, Parkland, Orlando, Boulder, Buffalo, Uvalde, City of Chicago, Milwaukee. These are all these mass shootings that happen with AR-15 rifles. And this is a rifle that our police department can't even carry. So teenagers, and I know this is a tragic event that happened in Colorado, but one part of my mind has to call him a teenager. He's 18 years of age. If he were driving and had an offense in an accident, a judge could look at him as a teen and be able to use that level of discretion. Of course, we're going to punish him now as an adult, and he rightfully deserves that sort of punishment. But these are teenagers. He waited just after the day of being a 17-year-old to legally go across the finish line to pick up this assault rifle. Now, if I go buy Sudafed, I'm going into a national registry and a database with the Federal Drug Administration to make sure I'm not buying too much Sudafed. But yet this 18-year-old, and I need to be 21 years of age to go buy a beer. But at 18 years of age, a child, a young man can go and buy an assault rifle that our policemen cannot carry in their own car. So no, that part is political on what we make the law. On the spiritual dimension, we're talking about the need for this violence. Where is it coming from? And why is it happening more frequently and it's becoming more deadly? On that spiritual side, look at the toys that our children are playing with, these video games, Grand Theft Auto, Mortal Kombat. My youngest son is 20 years of age, Santita, Noah. Our nation's been at war every day of his life. That's the political and the spiritual. Our children have become desensitized to war and to killing in the games that they're playing. And the social, historical. Our nation was founded, Second Amendment. More people know about grabbing for a gun than grabbing for a God. They don't know about the Second Commandment. That's where we started getting to the spiritual and the social history. So I could go on. This is one of the reasons I am running for Congress, is because the federal government can say and do something about this. Federal law can stop this behavior of these sales, legal sales of hip assault rifles.
Wow. Second Amendment, Second Commandment. Ouch. Dwight McKee, talk to me. Are we asking the right questions?
We're not giving the right answer. Is that it's very hard for us to understand the depravity of man. The heart of man is wicked above all things, the Bible says. Cain killed Abel with a brick, and that was his brother. The Romans used to traditionally feed Christians to the lions for sport. The Nazis killed 6 million Jews, and they were their neighbors. There is an inherent depravity of the man that the Bible talks about, that because we come out of a civilized culture, it's very hard for us to recognize. When you take that innate depravity and tie technology to that, where guns are available, then people are going to operate in their impulses. And they're going to do all the things that 10 Commandments command us not to do. There's a reason God commands us not to kill, command us not to steal, command us not to commit adultery. Because in lieu of those commandments, we will operate in our impulses and our instincts. And those things say to us, do whatever you want to do, because you want to do it. Fulfill your every desire, or your every impulse, unabated. And so that's why Jesus said, unless you're born again of the Spirit, unless your attitude, your mind, your heart changes, if you're just operating in the carnal, then you have carte blanche to rob, steal, whatever you so desire to do, unchecked. Laws cannot prevent that. Laws can punish that. But only you can prevent it if you have the right spirit, the right attitude, and have some sense of divine accountability that imposes innate check and balance on your propensities and your impulses. And because we don't really recognize that, we pretty much assume that people are good unless provoked to do bad. But history tells us people tend to be bad unless provoked to be good, unless scouted to be good. People are basically self-interest based. And even in a civilized society, there's an amorality that operates on structured greed, structured corruption, civilized decadence, but it's all in the heart of man.
You know what, Jonathan, before I go back to Jennifer Bishop and Pastor Thurston and the callers, you looked at this, you looked at the Second Amendment, you looked at the Second Commandment. If you go into Congress, what can you do? What should legislators do? I mean, do they have an obligation to lead as well as legislate? I mean, what can you do if you go there that you cannot do out of elective office?
Well, you would have a vote. This has to come down to changing laws. We can stay on in the courthouses, on the main squares. We can do the demonstrations, and that's important. We also have to make sure that our legislators have the courage to sign and pass the laws to raise their voice and not let this become a muted item and another incident. And far too often, we know what needs to be done, but we don't have, I believe, frequently enough, the leadership that has the unmitigated gall, the internal fortitude to stand up and speak out. And after these funerals are had and the children are buried, far too often people become silent. No, we have to continue to raise our voice and not desecrate the memory of our loved ones and these children. I was at a church service yesterday, and when the minister had the children on jumbo screen put up with these 21 victims in Texas, it hit me in a different kind of way just to see the scale and not a little clip on a phone, but the bigger than life size picture of these children and family members. And I think we have to continue to put the pictures up of our loved ones so that they are never forgotten. Don't let this become, prayers and thoughts and hope and change. No, this is policy and action that we can do. And so the good people have to come out and stay out until this is resolved. The NRA should have been down. They should have had so many people in the streets that they would have had to cancel the convention. The bodies hadn't even been buried. The blood hadn't been cleaned up. And they're moving on with business as usual. That's a spiritual crisis that we're facing in our country, Santita.
773-763-9278. I promise you I'm going to get to you in a minute. Jennifer, what are you hearing? Yes.
All I can do to tell you is the story of a 16-year-old that lived in Winnetka, Illinois, raised by nice parents, had every advantage, that killed my family members because he showed every warning sign. Every warning sign. He tried to poison his own parents. He was shooting at the age of 13 with a BB gun. Second graders that stood out in front waiting for the bus near his house. He talked about it. He had a locked bedroom with a padlock on his door that his parents allowed, when inside of it he had stolen a gun. He had that in there. He had writings about how all the ideation he had about Hitler and Manson, and he showed for years warning signs. He was everything that Dr. Robert Hare, who defined in psychology and psychiatric science, wrote a book 40 years ago called Without Conscience, defining what sociopathology is, and all of the warning signs were there, and yet his parents did nothing. They did nothing. He tried to kill them, and they did nothing. He went into a hospital. He was evaluated as dangerous, and the parents took him home and let him go back to a normal life. The siblings of this young man begged the parents not to take him out of that hospital, but they did. They just let him manipulate them again. We have to look ahead and recognize the potential. If we see alienation in our young men, if we see violence in our young men, we've got to act. And unfortunately, the laws don't really support preventative action. That has to come from parents and teachers in society. We have to really now, if we're not attentive to this now, after all we've been through, then we're really not very smart, because we now know many of these warning signs, and we are not acting proactively to help. And it's all young men. Mm-hmm. This is not young women doing these things. These are teenage young men. And so we need to be on the high alert lookout, and we need to be proactive to really try to rein in and get to the heart of what is going on with these people and get them out of free access to dangerous activity. It's scary.
Reverend Thurston, the warning signs. Last year, Peyton Gendron, the alleged shooter in Buffalo, threatened to kill his high school class. Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris in Columbine walked around displaying antisocial behavior for a year before they killed everybody at Columbine. Reverend Thurston, the warning signs.
Cognitive dissonance and confirmation bias preclude many, as guests just spoke about, the parents who ignored the warning signs. It prevents many from facing the facts, holding up the mirror, and doing the internal work. And so we avoid the red flags and the signs, because acknowledging them brings about accountability. And even when you look at the history of violence, the commonality is that the primary motivations were moral. This means that the perpetuators of the violence felt like what they were doing was morally right. It wasn't about a breakdown in moral sensibilities, but more that their sense of morality was different. They viewed violence as the fundamentally right thing to do, even if no one else could see any possible justification for it. So we have to readjust and recalibrate the moral fabric of our culture, of our society, to make right and wrong, and stop playing in the gray areas.
Brian, you called back. I'm so glad you got the last couple of minutes. What's your comment before we go to break?
Good morning, Santita. Thank you for taking my call. So many things to say. Quote from Ralph Nader, probably around 1970, need to be updated, but he said TV is the most important media of all. It will either save America or send it to its demise. I think he was correct on that. Speaking of religious dimension, Matthew 25, Sermon on the Mount, Martin Luther King, April 15, 1967, this confused war in Vietnam is wreaking havoc upon promises of the Great Society. I believe connection between poverty and crime. I believe let's don't blame the children or teenagers. Of course, if one does a murder, no excuse for that. Have to be punished. That's too dangerous a situation. But how to solve it? I have some suggestions. You might want to check Franklin Delano Roosevelt's Economic Bill of Rights, 1944. Robert F. Kennedy on crime. The essential cause is poverty of goods, poverty of understanding. Consequences are loss of health, loss of dignity, loss of simple justice, and loss of respect for law. We have every resource necessary to conquer all forms of poverty and their symptoms. I think that's a very good quote. His brother, New Deal Democrat Edward Kennedy, first time I worked for a politician, Fall 79, talked about price freeze, people needing to afford basic staples of life, prices going through the roof, inflation. We need a price profits and all across the board so people can afford food week to week and not get kicked out of their homes. Those are some ideas I have. I have a whole lot more, but not the time.
You know what? But I appreciate your engagement because, it's going to take all of us, Brian, all of us, to resolve this. We can't just leave it to the legislators, although they have to do their jobs on the state and federal levels and the local levels. But this is our collective problem. That's why I wanted us to have a collective conversation about it with one another. Stay right here, everybody. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Going to bring up Athena Williams very quickly on the other side of the break. May 31st, the Illinois HousingHelp.org program ends. Illinois Homeowner Assistance. You can get $30,000, everybody. If you fell behind in your mortgage payments on your home, you don't have to lose it. You have access to about $30,000, but that program ends today. Just going to talk about that for a couple of minutes so we'll get on the other side of the break. Still want to hear from you. 773-763-9278. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. You all are the best. Thank you so much. Oh, look, I told you one. Oh no, you're the best, really. Because I said, I think we're on loop with the deaths and with the conversation that is moving us nowhere. They don't want to address violence in the culture. And when you tell your family story, Jennifer, it just tears your heart apart. It's like, you mean?
It does. And you want to hold the parents accountable. Now, it is really hard to say this, but I think that there probably does need to be more. If somebody has a teenage boy that does any of this ideation, There's got to be some other stronger ways that we can be proactive. We just, it's not enough. We are not responding to clear warning signs in many cases. And I'm sorry to say this, but I'm going to have to run off to work.
Love you so much. Jonathan?
Bless you. Thank you so much for having this conversation.
Yeah, I wanted you to say goodbye to Jennifer.
Oh, hey, Jennifer. Love you, Jennifer.
Jonathan, I'm going to come down and I'm coming down to help.
Come on, I look forward to it. And I need you on June 13th.
June 13th.
We're having a town hall. What I want to talk about gun violence.
Oh, I'll be there. I'll call your office.
No, call me or call him. Oh, Cosme, can you turn that down, babe? Call me or call him. Okay, Jennifer. I'll reach out to Jennifer. Okay, I'll reach out to Jennifer for you, Jonathan. Jennifer, you there? Okay, all right. Okay, do we have Miss Williams?
Yeah, she's up.
Okay, Athena, can you? Hi, Athena. I have Jonathan on with us today.
Your brother?
Yes, there he is. Jonathan, this is your classmate from Whitney Young. He's right there. He's on the phone.
How are you today? Hey there.
I'm good. How you doing? Did you tell Barry I said hi?
I did. He was out of the country. Just got back here.
Okay.
Okay, Athena, this is going to be about 2.5 minutes, okay? Okay, because I want you to let people know that they need to, this is the last day for this program. But I felt it was important. I think that you're doing such great work. It's really important that they hear your voice, okay?
Okay, great.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, and thank you. Thank you for working with us.
Of course. Anything for my people.
I love it. I love it.
And I have John Michaels up too.
Okay, fantastic. Wonderful. It's going to be great. John?
Hello there. How are you?
I'm doing great. I have my brother Jonathan on with us today.
Good morning. My goodness.
And we have John Nichols.
Jonathan, how are you?
From the nation, Jonathan. Yeah.
Well, 30 seconds under. Well, man.
That's right. He's running for Congress here. The election, everybody, the primary is on June 28th. So you've got to please spread the word. Another form of voter suppression is not talking about these campaigns. They're not having debates on television. I think that's very interesting and very dangerous, because we will have an election and no one will know it. Stand by.
Santita Jackson Show.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We've been talking about what's really underneath all of this violence. Thank you, Jennifer Bishop from the Brady campaign, for being with us today. As we talk about this, as we break this down with congressional candidate Jonathan Jackson, Dwight McKee, Pastor Stephen Thurston from the Salem Baptist Church, the House of Hope. At New Covenant, they will be having his home church as well. They will be having a candidates forum. What is the date, Jonathan, of the candidates forum?
June 13th, 7 p.m.
Okay, can't wait to be there at New Covenant. But before we get back into this conversation and the callers and everyone else, today, May 31st, the Illinois Homeowners Assistance Fund, this program ends. They are offering up to $30,000, everybody, for you to pay for all of your back due monies on your house. Athena Williams, who is the director of the Oak Park Regional Housing Center, this is her program, this is her baby, and I wanted to bring her back on just to thank you for using this show as a platform. But you got to get people You got to get people out there so they can try and get this money, Athena.
Yes, Ms. Jackson, and thank you for having me on again. I'm so happy and excited to be here in your presence. But I just want to share with everyone that this is crucial. This is a very crucial time for homeowners. If you are struggling to pay your mortgage due to COVID, if you're behind on your mortgage, behind on your property taxes, today is the last day for you to come into the office and get assistance with that application. The application portal closes at noon. So we need people to get there. You can call. We can help you over the phone to walk through the process because we do phone counseling as well. But it's vitally important as today is the last day for people to come out to apply for the $30,000 Homeowners Assistance Fund through the Illinois Housing Development Authority program. My name is Athena Williams. I'm the Executive Director of Oak Park Regional Housing Center, and we are here for you.
Amen. And that number, come on, give us that number, Athena.
Yeah, the phone number is 773-887-5187. We're located in the Austin community on the west side. The address is 5934 West Lake Street. You can feel free to walk in. Feel free to call 773-887-5187. We are here for you. Please come get that help that you need for your home. And thank you so much, Mrs. Jackson.
Oh, girl, that's good. Come on, I got to help out a fellow Dolphin. Whitney Young in the house. Love it. John, this is Jonathan's classmate, too. That's what she said. I couldn't believe it. I said, she is my brother's classmate. Whoa. Oh, bless your heart. Sending you much love. Oh, bless your heart. Athena Williams, everybody. Call 773-887. 5187 773-887 5187
9, not 91. Wait. 773-887. Yep, you're right.
No,
I'm sorry.
No. Look, if I made a mistake, I want to be corrected. But it's 773-887-5187. 773-887-5187, or go to IllinoisHousingHelp.org, or just go to the office. The program ends today. The portal closes at 12. Sending you much love, Athena Williams. Can't wait to have you back. The Oak Park Regional Housing Center has, sending you much love. They do a lot of great work, and we're going to be talking with them in the future on the Santita Jackson Show. Let me go to at least one caller, and then I want to go back to my guests. Bob from Indiana. Bob, what's on your mind? Bob, what's on your mind?
Well, I think I might have something that will actually help with all of this gunplay and everything else. And I got something in the mail last week that really set me thinking, and I went ahead and acted. Have you ever heard of Emily's List?
No, I haven't.
Well, they've been sending out flyers, and I know they're on the computer too. And what it was a list of candidates for 2022 for the House, Senate, and Government. And they had, I forget how many of them, but there's every race and creed imaginable across the country that they're supporting for office. They're all progressive Democrats, and they're all women. And that's the key. We've got to give the steering wheel over to the girls for a change. Things will start to get done. I guarantee it. It might take time, but the boys just haven't cut it. I hate to say, generally, and I think we got to get some, not just new blood, but female blood into offices high and low And we'll see some changes and improvements all the way around. I feel that there's just no way that we can't see a better world.
I like that in you. I like that in you. But, you know, I think that we need a change of perspective. We need some legislators who are not beholden to the gun manufacturers. You know, the NRA was not always held hostage by Jonathan, the gun manufacturers, but everything's become corporatized. Our parties, our national parties have been corporatized. It's the corporations that control the parties, they control our advocacy organizations. How can you face up to that if you get to Washington, Jonathan?
I think that's a matter of morals, principles. I see the violence. It's here in Chicago. I'm going into the churches during this campaign season, working on the plain platforms and going to receptions, introducing myself to people, and to get this eerie sense after you meet someone and you say, "How are you? Do you have concerns?" And a woman will tell you, "Yes, I want to hear about your position on gun violence. I've lost 2 of my children in the last 5 years." And it just stops you in your track. And unfortunately, this is far too frequent. If you ask people at church, raise your hand if you lost someone to gun violence, and you see 70% of the people raising their hands. This is now epidemic. So there are 2 really pandemics going on. One is COVID, and the other is gun violence. 45,000 people are getting shot and killed a year in America through gun violence. All we have to do is look to the north, and Canada now is doing a buyback on all assault rifles and making stricter bans on guns. We've had one mass gun shooting in London, and they quickly came back, passed the law, took the guns off the street. And I don't want to conflate the issues. Mental illness, which is a big issue, and people need their help with gun violence. And simply saying that all gun violence is mental illness is not true. People have mental illness and don't commit these sort of acts and atrocities. And the reason they're committing these acts and atrocities is because of access to the guns. We can stop the access. The federal government regulates the manufacture of the guns. It has something to say in the alcohol, tobacco, firearms on the sale of guns. I want to get to Congress to make that an action item that we can resolve. That's not a city issue. There's not one gun shop in the city of Chicago, not one gun range in the city of Chicago. So passing stricter laws in Chicago is not going to stop the sale of guns coming in from Indiana, from Arkansas, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Mississippi, and being flooded into our market. We can stop those sales and trace them. And I want to tell you, lastly, I am a defender of children. And as heinous these crimes and acts are, and children are wilding out, there is no place in America where a child can buy a gun. I want to go after the adults that are selling the children the guns.
Right. What about these adults who sell children the guns? I mean, you know when someone's a child, right? What is that about? Selling these guns to children, and where do they get this money? Where are they getting this money? I mean, these guns are not inexpensive.
Yeah, but again, this is more than just a gun crisis. This is an existential crisis. Santita, is that the leading cause of death after murder for kids, for teenagers, is suicide. And after then, it's OD on drugs. The leading cause of death for policemen is suicide. For military people, it's suicide. This is an existential crisis. Guns are just a means to an end. But if you stop the sale of guns, but don't deal with the spiritual decadence of people, then by whatever means necessary, they're used to create havoc. It's our indignation in these issues is selective. We tend to be violated by those violent issues that affect us directly. So we get very violated by Buffalo. But our government killed 1 million people in Afghanistan, and the people that did that, we gave them medals and pensions and free tickets to the football game. Dr. King says that unless you love your neighbor and yourself, we all doomed to more decay and a spiteful, hateful society. He always talked about, and I love society, but the emphasis was always on love. We have to learn to love each other.
Amen to that. Renee from Chicago. What's on your mind, Renee? Dwight, hold on one moment. Let me grab Renee.
Hi, good morning. Well, thanks for taking my call. I just want to say that in regards to what the previous caller said, about having women taking over and stuff, can you imagine having a Congress full of Marjorie Taylor Greene? That would be horrible. Not to say that all women would be like that, but you do. It's not just a gender issue. It's an issue of people having integrity and being fair. Some of the people handing those lynch ropes to white men to lynch black people were white women or women who accused innocent black men of racist stuff. We need to have the people who are in Congress to start doing their job and looking out for the American people instead of looking out for corporations. And when I think about the fact that some people might call me old, I'm 63, but in my lifetime, relatively speaking, that's not very old. In my lifetime, we had people work for our very government, kicking dogs, like you mentioned earlier, on peaceful marchers. We've had our FBI and our Chicago Police Department engaged in murdering peaceful people, the Black Panthers, who are trying to look out for people, not just black people, but trying to do things to give them free health care and preschool. Before we started talking about preschool, our government during my lifetime has done things to like in Chicago, where they used to shoot to kill. Peaceful protesters. Our government has done that. So since that was my lifetime, maybe some of this conflict that's going on right now, people are allowed to get on social media and tell their plans to kill people without being stopped before they get a chance to do it. Maybe that's because there are still people in our government who allow this to happen, especially when I look at Chicago with all the murders that are unthought of. You can't tell me with all these cameras all over Chicago that they don't see who's doing some of these crimes. And you can't tell me in the city where people at the water department said they wanted to go on safari and hunt us, that there are people who carry badges and guns who go around hunting us, or turning a blind eye when they see people about to move. And that's all I want to say for right now. And thank you for taking my call.
Well, please, you said a lot. Jonathan, you want to have some more Marjorie Taylor Greenes in Congress with you? Congresswoman Karens. Just kidding.
I remember just the other week I was in Congresswoman Maxine Waters' office, and I was watching her, looking at the screen in her office of Marjorie Taylor Greene on the House floor. And I think people need to be updated on who Marjorie Taylor Greene is. A woman that wants to go past the security checkpoint in the Congress so that she can open carry her gun. A woman who's been accused of having done reconnaissance work, taking people on tours to let people know from January 6th where persons' offices were in the Congress. And let's see the other lady out of Denver. She's special too. And she wants to bring some biscuit. And Senator Sinema, I can't pray like this people try to get in there. Let me win and get in there. But no, that's a bad idea. I respect General Starks, but just because she's a female, she can be gun-toting and dangerous as well.
Amen to that. Amen. Let's go to Paul from Seattle. Paul?
Okay.
What you say, Jonathan?
Good morning, Santita. Thank you for taking my call. I want to give people something to write down, so find your pencil and paper, your pen and paper down. I'll tell you in a minute what it is. I'll give it to you short, sweet, and neat, as they say. We could talk about all, religious, theological, and all kinds of sociological problems with society, but we've taken our eye off the ball, and there's one thing that we can do, one thing we need from Congress, and that is this. Here's how we took our eye off the ball. In 1994, the Democrats, along with led by President Clinton, passed the assault weapons ban. When that expired, that had a 10-year CARES expiration. It expired in 2004, and straight away after that, the Republicans and George Bush passed, and here's what you have to write down, because this is what you want to call your person in Congress and say, repeal the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. The Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act is what gives the gun industry carte blanche exemption to strict product liability. So they can't be sued. And therefore, the externalizations, the external damages that their products cause to society, they never have to internalize those costs like every other industry does. I mean, I'll give you an example. For instance, a pizza maker will add a few pennies to the price of a pizza to cover the occasional time when inadvertently an olive pit may end up on the pizza and someone bites into it, breaks their tooth. Okay, they are strictly liable for that injury because all this is necessary strict liability is that the cause of the injury, the proximate cause, that's the legal cause, be proved. And the cause of death for every one of those 21 victims last week and all the 10 victims in the supermarkets was cause of injury and death was ballistic trauma. The ballistic trauma is caused by a gun. So I don't want anybody telling me it ain't guns. Yes, it is. Only guns cause ballistic trauma. And if they had to internalize the cost, the price of these weapons, an AR-15, I just looked it up, and I wrote an article you can find on my article on Medium.com or on Facebook. Just search for No Free Lunch for Gun Makers, and you'll find my article. And I'll send it to you, too, Santita, by email. Mm-hmm. But what it is that, an AR-15, it costs anywhere from $700 to $1,200, depending on how many bells and whistles you want on it. But if they had to internalize the litigation costs for the damage that kind of a weapon causes to society, those wouldn't be $700. They'd be more like $2,000 or $3,000. And that means a young 18-year-old is less likely to get a hold of it. That also means that the profit margin is on a gun like that is going to be much less. In fact, it might not even be worth making anymore because it's not profitable. And that way we don't have to take guns away from people. The gun industry will take the guns away from the people because they're not profitable, because all we are talking about here is money.
You know, Paul, I want to stay right there because I want Dwight and Jonathan to respond to you. I only have about 3.5 minutes left in the show. Dwight, 1.5 minutes belongs to you. Closing thought.
Well, in Uganda, they had a civil war, and 100,000 people killed another 100,000 people with machetes and so on. If you make this an issue about guns, at one level, we can legislate the sale of guns. We can legislate people's access to guns. And that will have an effect, no doubt. But ultimately, when you got murder in your heart, you will find a way to heal. Ultimately, if you got lost in your heart, you'll find a way to seal. Mm-hmm. And so unless we impose in people's spirit a moral imperative, unless we connect them to some divine accountability, unless we prick their conscience and love them enough that they feel secure and comfortable in themselves to receive and to give love, then all you're going to do is recycle approaches to violence and the loss of it. You have to be born again. I got that from Jesus, not from
Jonathan, last 90 seconds belong to you.
Hey, I would say once again, from the Tree of Life Synagogue to San Bernardino, Waffle House, Sandy Hook, Aurora, Colorado, Boulder, Buffalo, Uvalde, Milwaukee, Chicago. These mass shootings are taking place with an AR-15 assault rifle. The Congress can immediately ban these assault rifles. I would envision a day when police departments all across America would stand up and protest with regular citizens and say we have to ban high-powered assault rifles. I could see the reluctance, the hesitation for those officers to run into that school building, unfortunately, in Texas. I don't want to blame them. These persons, this teenager, had more armament, higher firepower than a police officer. The officers were outgunned in the elementary school in Texas. So sure, they could have done this and that and all this other great things in retrospect and with the protocol, but the federal government, Congress can act on banning and high-power assault rifle for the safety of our police, for the safety of our children. We've seen this movie before. It's repeating itself. It's increasing in frequency and in the deadliness, and it's being perpetrated by younger people. These are the spiritual God brothers and God children of Kyle Rittenhouse. Why are these young men so angry? And we also have to take a look at young white men that are going into school shooting up. So there's something there. We need to bring the psychologists and psychiatrists on board, not simply the police. Let's go to the source and find out what is going on in these young men's mind, why they're so angry at life.
Amen. I tell you what, I keep calling their names. Salvador Ramos, Uvalde, Peyton Ginford. That's right. In Buffalo. You need to know who their parents are. See, they developed as murderers under the care of their guardians and parents. What communities do they come from? Who are they? If someone is murderous, if someone is a white supremacist who's murderous, if someone harbors these issues in their hearts, I think I want to know who they are, and I want to know what created them. I think we need to know. No, the corporate media are protecting these families of these murderers. They're not protecting us. We need to know who everybody is. We need to know who each person is. We can know where they came from, how they got here. Let's think about this. Let's start asking the right questions and demand that the corporate media ask the right questions so that we can get the right answers and we can resolve this. Because we can resolve this. If we don't, we're going to perish. We're going to, but we don't have to. I love you, everybody. Jonathan Jackson, thank you for being with us today. Dwight McKee, Pastor Stephen Thurston, Jennifer Bishop, Dr. Shanina Knighton. What a wonderful show. Coach May, thank you for a great show. I love you, everybody. God bless you. Cannot wait. Abraham down there in Venezuela. Sending you much love, everybody. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow, Lord willing, on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless you. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Dwight. Oh, okay. Well, there we go. Thank you, Coach May.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson.